All right, today I have Glenn with me who runs survivalstill.com, and he's going to share with us his a little bit more about his entrepreneurial journey, his story, and also some tips about working with family, which is something I definitely am excited to hear about. So, welcome to the show, Glenn.
Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah, thanks for being on. And why don't you just start off by telling us about how you got started?
Yeah, sure. I started about 25 years ago. I started with my family's business right out of college. Actually, I stopped a year before college. I didn't finish college, and I went to go help my father. And awesome experience. I loved it, and I did that for like 20 years. And that was in the water treatment industry. And he was a manufacturer, or that the business was a manufacturing company, and we produced awesome products. Um, and I got a ton of experience that way. I did. It was mainly in sales. I did in-home sales. I learned. I went in-home like vacuum cleaner salesman, and
Nice.
and it was it was totally uncomfortable. I hated it, but it was. I became good at it, and
Hmm.
it's a great skill to have,
Yeah, for sure.
And but then we did a lot of this international business, which was cool. I ended up taking over South America as a territory, so I would travel all throughout South America, and that was fantastic. Then I opened up a Malay Asian office. I lived in Kuala Lumpur for a while.
Wow.
Fantastic. And then I also got quite a bit of experience in the commercial sales, where we'd sell really large equipment to $500,000 equipment to businesses. And so that was a totally different experience on the sales side. So
Yeah.
I loved that. And so that was fantastic. I then left in 2012, and I invented a product, the Survival Still, and it's an awesome product. I'm very proud of it. Um, Basically, it's a emergency water purification system. People can purify water, basically any water. They could purify ocean water,
Wow.
pond water, lake water, whatever, if they need to, if there's an emergency. And there's nothing on the market like it. So it sold really well. It's still the primary product that I sell. Um, and so what I did is I started off, and I tried to get dealers. That
Hmm.
was my main strategy, and actually it worked out well. I got a lot of dealers, but uh, they never reordered. So I'd get all these dealers in, put all these orders in, and then they'd never reorder.
Gotcha.
And so I had to dig into that. Why did they not reorder? And I found that people don't know what distillation is. There needs to be quite a, you can compare my product, which is about $300, versus a life straw. And a life straw you can buy for $20. Why am I paying $300 for this?
Right.
And and if you don't explain that right, then people don't get it, and they just end up buying the life straw. And the dealers weren't experienced enough with that, and at the same time they didn't care if they sold life straws instead of survival still. They didn't
They're
care.
still
They weren't.
selling. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So uh, that took me to, I had to figure this out, and so I went to some trade shows. That was okay, and then I came across this guy that wanted to do a webinar with me. I never even heard of webinar. That was 2013, May of 2013,
Wow.
and we sold on one webinar, one weekend. We sold 189 products. I was like, holy crap, this is awesome! Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Uh, so it was awesome, because what it does is it allows me to do this. It's like being in the home. You're face to face with somebody. There's no intermediary. I'm able to get, to actually educate people
Right.
in what they need to know to make the decision. So it was a perfect scenario. And so I I thought this is great, and so with this guy, we decided, okay, let's do the same thing next month, and the next month after that, and the next month after that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next month, big deal. I was expecting this huge, sales again, and then he did some technical thing, and the whole thing didn't work. I got no sales out of it.
Bummer.
So I'm like, oh my god, this sucks, because there's a lot of costs when you're manufacturing. And the other thing is, I'm manufacturing, or I'm getting it manufactured. I got to plan this stuff out 2 months in advance. So there's a lot of balls up in the air, and so you really got to get this thing figured out.
Yeah.
And next month we decided to do it again. Same thing happens. Something happened, and we got like 2 sales because something went wrong. And again, it's kind of that situation. He's selling other stuff. Mine's just my product is just kind of one of the things that he sells.
Mm-hmm.
Whether my product sells or not doesn't really bother him, doesn't really hurt his business, but it's huge for me.
Yeah.
I need to sell this. So at that point, I just said, okay, I'm doing this myself. And I went and figured out how to do this myself. Mm-hmm. And that was it. That started it. And it was, even today, I'd say 90% of my sales are with affiliates, with webinars to JV affiliates.
Gotcha.
And so it's been really good for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's starting to change, though. We're going into another mode where we have to change, and I don't know exactly why that is. There's some problems with JV affiliate approaches, at least for physical products. First of all, for some reason, it's getting harder to find JV affiliates, and I don't know. Maybe I've just kind of
run your whole list. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's it, but I don't know. It seems to me that there's some more fundamental changes happening with what people want to promote and that type of thing. But the other problem is, like I said, it's highly variable. The sales are like this year we had kind of a slow beginning of the year,
mm-hmm.
and then in August we had the best month we've ever had.
Yeah,
and that sounds great, but it totally took us by surprise, so we weren't prepared for it.
Yeah.
So we had a couple good webinars, and then we had this other webinar with this lady who's an affiliate with us. We've done it with her probably 5 times already. Mm-hmm. And usually the more you do it with the same person, the sales go down.
Right.
Because you're running through that list. And so we were kind of anticipating like 50 sales.
Right.
So we do this webinar. She got 7,000 people registered for the webinar. We got a ton of sales, and it's like, totally blew us out of the water. We blew through our inventory. I had to fly up to see our manufacturer and kick him in the butt and say, "Hey, we need this stuff."
Yeah.
and so he just jumped through hoops to help us out, but it still took us like 6 to 8 weeks to get the product out to some of the people, and they weren't happy. But I was transparent in the whole process.
Yeah.
So it worked out. It's just this up and down thing. Mm-hmm. You're really, when you're doing the JV affiliate approach, you're not in control of your sales.
Yeah, unfortunately.
What's that?
Unfortunately, because you have no idea what the reaction level is going to be or how big the actual show up rate is. I mean, you have a bunch of things outside of your control, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, sometimes people flake out. A lot of times people flake out, and so you're expecting this big webinar, and then nothing happens.
Right.
Or there's this big list. You try to work with this affiliate. You've been trying to work with this affiliate for months and months and months. You really try to get on this guy, and then you find out that his list is more of a spam list.
Yeah.
And, so it doesn't. He might have 120,000 people on this list, but it performs like crap.
Right.
And I have people that I work with that have 10,000 people in their list that will do, 100 sales
Right.
in a weekend, and then you get these ones that have 120, 150 or more, and they'll do 3, 5 sales, whatever, just because their list is
Beat to
their
death.
list. What we're doing now, I guess this is kind of where we're at with our process is, we've got this process totally dialed in and figured out. But now what we need to do is we need to pivot. I don't think it's a pivot a lot, but we just need to make it so that we can do the same thing, but just generate leads from Facebook.
Right.
And if we can do that, and basically take what we're paying for commissions over here, and then just allocate that as the cost of sales on the advertising and all that stuff. If we can figure out that formula, then that'll be a much better formula, because we can just basically control the sales that we generate every month.
Yeah.
And so we're still working on that, and I've hired somebody to do that for me, and hopefully that's going to be dialed in here soon. I've got my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So
you've gone from kind of like up and down sales with JVs, which is great, because you have the huge spikes where it's exciting, or you have some chaos there, but it's up and down, like you said. You never know what you're going to get to. You're trying to shift to where you can control your own stream, exactly. on a daily, weekly basis, right?
Yep, exactly.
What do you think are, well, I guess a few questions. One, have you done all the webinars live for all your JV partners?
We used to, but I've gone to all recorded now.
Okay.
Just because, first of all, it was, even after I'd done 100, I would still be nervous as hell every time I got on and did it. Because the way it would work for us is we would have all of our sales come in from 2 events in the month, and so that event is so important for your sales and for the viability of your business that you just, it's so stressful.
Yeah, for sure.
And things come up. There's technical issues. There's one time where I accidentally muted myself and I didn't realize it, and it was like 2 minutes in. I was smart enough to have my son in the other room watching it and just being my technical guy.
Yep. And
he just runs in, you muted yourself. And I don't know how many people I lost during that period.
Right.
And then there were some times where there was a thunderstorm outside and the power went out and my internet went down and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I just said, all right, I'm going to recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually worked out a lot better, because I'm able to dial in every minute of the webinar. I'm able to, just optimize it, get the time down as condensed as possible, and it still seems live.
Mm-hmm.
I keep updated with the new events, latest events, everything, and it's so much easier. I'll be watching TV. I'll be watching The Big Bang Theory, and the webinar's going on.
And you're making money.
Exactly.
That's cool. Yeah, just wondering. And was there a specific format that you started out when you, obviously doing 100 live is a good idea. I think people should do a lot of live ones before they move to recorded, because it's better to learn it real time like that. Even though I've done, not 100, but I've done quite a few myself. And you're nervous, and there's, like you said, there's a bunch of things, but it is good to do it live first. Is there a format that you've used, or did you just develop it organically based on knowing what you had to do with your in-home sales? Because you've done, you've done the real sales work of selling to people like that.
Yeah, I basically took that knowledge that I had before and developed that. But one of the things that I've done that I has been very successful for me, and people just love my webinars, because it's not a sales pitch. It's about a 45-minute education class about what they need to know about water in an emergency. And I go through the Red Cross recommendations, which the Red Cross recommends distillation for emergency. And then I explain what distillation is, why they recommend distillation and not filters for dangerous water, why the different types of contaminants that you have to take out of water, why distillation works on all of them. And I don't just focus on distillation. I give them other options. Yeah, so I go through and actually provide people the information that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And it's objective. It's not a sales presentation. And then at the end of that, I say, now we're going to go into Q&A. If you don't mind, what I'd like to do before we go into Q&A is just tell you a little bit about what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my transition. And then I go into what I do and the product that I have. And then I give them a really good offer that's good for 48 hours. And they're able to make the decision because they have the information that they need at that point. And so it's perfect. The other thing that I love about webinars is, if you compare it to like in-home sales,
Mm-hmm.
when you go in-home sales, which is like really uncomfortable for you and for the other person, and it just kind of sucks all the way around.
Yeah.
But one thing that I don't like about it is I'm invested in whether they're going to purchase from me at that time. And when I do webinars and I'm talking to, let's say, 1,000 people at a time, I don't care if that person buys, because I know that my system works and that I'm going to get a certain percentage. I'm going to get this many sales from the webinar.
Right.
If this person contacts me or this person contacts me, I give them just honest answers, objective answers, because I'm not invested in whether that person buys or not.
Individually, yeah. You know the whole
Yeah.
process works.
Yeah. So I have faith in the process, and so that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. It's overall, how long have you been doing webinars now?
Since May of 2013.
Gotcha. So you have definitely put in the time. So,
Yep.
So in the beginning, you had a successful one, and then you had some issues with the guy that you had originally brought in to help you with it, and then you took it over. From the point that you took over to today, if you looked at like your conversion or your improvements, or what's been that path, like if you had 100 people watch a webinar, the first time you did it on your own, how many bought, compared to today, if 100 people watch a webinar, how many do you statistically see buy? And I know it ranges with the list like we talked about, but just as like a general rule, have you seen an increase in your performance and productivity, or has it just been the repetition of doing it over and over?
Yeah, we've fine-tuned and tweaked, definitely. But also the market has changed. Back then it was a brand new product and it was exciting for people. Now a lot of people have seen my webinar. A lot of people that's in my space have seen my webinar. And I've burned through a lot of lists.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've improved, but the market is harder.
Gotcha.
So I guess it's kind of a wash,
Mm-hmm.
but it is. I'd say it's definitely getting harder. It's more work to get the same results now, just because finding the affiliates and all that stuff to work with.
Gotcha. So if you shift completely to driving just all your own traffic, then you should have more control over your day-to-day and your growth, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yep. That's really the key goal of my business right now. And I'm hoping that the person that I've hired for this is going to be able to do this very, very quickly. I don't think it'll be that hard to make the transition. The main thing is you're dealing with when you're dealing with JV affiliates, you're dealing with a trusted audience.
Right.
So they trust that person, so they come to you, and you're kind of piggybacking on the trust that the affiliate has earned with them. And at Facebook, it's cold, and so you have to, there's not the trust built up, mm-hmm. And so there's a process there, and that's what I'm hoping that the person I hired is going to figure out is, how do we warm them up? How do we get the trust built up? Mm-hmm. To some degree before we do the webinar.
Yeah.
So that's where the experimentation comes in. and we'll figure it out.
And when you started basically 4 years ago now, moving to this, doing webinars, what was your mindset in the beginning when you started that process, and what have you learned, to this point? 4 years is longer than people want to hear that something takes, or that you invest that much time. So, how have you kind of, from a mindset perspective, how have you continued to work on this and tweak it and adjust it? Like, what's that been like?
Well, it pretty much worked from the get-go. So it hasn't been 4 years to figure this out. It's been,
Okay.
Tweaking, and I've developed my business in other ways. I've been trying to develop some other businesses on the side that are not necessarily physical products, but that's been harder actually. I've got, I guess one of the things that I would do differently is I'm coming out with a new product next year, early next year, and I would have done that sooner.
Gotcha.
I would have moved faster to develop new products, and I think it's just mainly a matter of, I had certain things I wanted to get in place before I launched that new product, and just for security's sake. And that probably wasn't the right way to go. I should have been more aggressive with just going ahead and launching those new products, because the new product I'm going to launch is pretty awesome. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Awesome.
And
when's that coming out?
it'll be spring of 2018.
Fantastic. Well, when that's out, let us know. We'll have you back on, and we can talk about that too.
Yeah, appreciate it. I appreciate it.
One thing we've talked a lot about the kind of JV approach, which I think I'm glad you shared your experience there, because I think you're exactly right that, and I've done that before too. Sometimes you have a great JV and a great list, and like one of my most successful JVs that I worked with has a list of like 3,500 people, and it's generated me way more sales than my JVs that have 50 or 60 or 70,000, because he has a really active list. So that's a great point, because some people are like, oh, if you do JV, then it'll blow up. And like you said, it's up and down, and it depends on the partner and if they do their job, and like there's just a bunch of factors in there. So that's a great experience to share that, so that people won't think it's just a magic pill for whatever you're doing. Plus, the other piece I like that you touched on is that you basically took all your knowledge from doing things in person and doing in-person sales. Like, you already know how to sell. It wasn't like you tried to not only learn how to do JVs and webinars and sell. You already had one of the core pieces down, which is key, because learning to sell, I think, is a skill that takes time to develop, and then when you have it, and you don't almost. It's almost like you don't think about it, but when you don't have it, everything is hard in business for sure.
Yeah, you need it. I mean, sales is everything.
Yeah.
And my understanding of the sales process has changed over the years, and I'm more. I want to have a product that I know is awesome. It's the best out there. I totally believe in, and then it's a matter of education and getting, transferring your passion to them.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to manipulate people in any way. I want to be straightforward, educate, transfer my passion, and then, give them a reason to buy now, as opposed to a month down the road.
Right. Yeah, and one thing you said, it's the exact same phrase I share with a lot of folks and with my own sales team. It's that transfer of belief, or that transfer of passion. That's when the sale happens, and that's definitely a great point. It's pretty simple in a sense if you can get that part, and like you said, educate them, and as long as you're offering something of value, that you believe in, the rest of it's in some senses straightforward. But yeah, and the other thing you touched on a little bit of how you worked in the family business in the beginning, but share more about that of what you've learned of, in working in family businesses and the ups and downs of that. Because in years past, I've had family members work with me. I've been involved in things like that, and it definitely can be a challenge. So what's that been like for you?
Well, okay, so the family business side of things was wonderful. I mean, it was. I actually went. I was going to University of Nebraska, and I dropped out because my father had some really tough times. He had some management that left, and they actually tried to destroy his business on the way out. It was really rough for him, and so I left because I knew he needed help. He needed people that he could trust and that were loyal to him. And so I left university, and I went and worked for him, hoping to develop a stronger relationship with my father, because he was always an entrepreneur, but he always, he was always involved in his work, and it worked. It was great. I mean, we developed an awesome relationship, and today we still have the most fantastic relationship possible. And I don't think that could have been possible without us working together. That being said, there were definitely some downsides of that. I mean, I worked at the business for 20 years thinking that I was earning equity in the business. And I felt like I was investing in my future and all that stuff. And then, there's some family dynamics, and it's not my father, but some family dynamics made it very clear that that was not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it actually turned out to be a very rough exit, very, very traumatic exit. And I ended up leaving. I had nothing.
Wow.
I mean, after 20 years of doing this, I really had nothing. And it was very rough. I didn't know that I'd be speaking to some of my family members ever again. And now everything's cleared up. We're great friends, everything. But I look back on that time, and I realized that trauma, that very hard breakup, was necessary for me to get out of there, because there's something about family businesses that just keep you in. Even if I knew that it wasn't going anywhere or whatever, it would have been hard to leave, very hard to leave.
Yeah.
For one reason, you get into a position where it hurt the family business if I left, because you're part of that. But at the same time, I'm not doing the right thing for me and my family, and so it's tough. It's tough. And if I was to give advice to anyone about that, I would say beware of the trap. And it's both ways. It's the child with the parents, and the parents with the child. So the children, I don't want to say children, but the kids. I don't know if you ever watched like Bar Rescue or any of these shows, but
yeah.
You get these kids that have their parents mortgage their house or cash in all of their retirement so that they can do a business, and that's totally the wrong thing to do. You can't borrow money from your parents unless they can afford to lose it.
Right.
That'd be my one recommendation there. But then on the parent side is, if you bring somebody into your business, if you bring one of your kids into your business, you can't trap them into the business. And if they get into the position of, like I said, if they get into the position where they're needed for the business, then they feel trapped, because oftentimes family businesses kind of struggle with finances and all that stuff, and so the kids don't want to leave because it would leave their parents high and dry, and so they're stuck there. And so what I would recommend for parents is to not get dependent on them, and also ensure that they have exits, and encourage the exit. And even you could do some kind of invest in educating your child on internet marketing. Send them to Funnel Hacking Live and some different events that they can learn how to do online marketing, and then they can come back and do online marketing and that type of thing for the business. Then they can do something on the side also. They can develop these skills, they can develop this network, and they can have their own thing going here, but they're helping out with the family. That's fine too, but it's not like this dependency thing.
Yeah.
That's where the traps come from. And I'm dealing with this now because my son just turned 18, and he's trying to figure out what he wants to do, and I'm I'm encouraging. I want to work with him,
Hmm.
but I don't. I want him to develop his own thing too, and I
Yeah.
want him to go out and have the experience of traveling the world and having a business that you can live anywhere. I mean, 18, 19, 20. That's the time to do it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So I want him to do that. I want to encourage him to do that. And if he wants to help me, and if he wants to get some salary from me during that period, yeah, great. I'd love to do that.
Hmm.
But I want him to, stand on his own 2 feet, get out there, do it, and be an entrepreneur. I'm very encouraging. I'm encouraging him to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and I think he wants to be also. So
Yeah, and I think the way that you just shared and described, like, having your family involved, kids or being with parents, whatever, is great, and there's a lot of perks to it. But the way you described it a minute ago, of like saying, going to conferences or teaching, the kids that are involved in the business to do other things too, keeps that window open of they could have a
yeah,
side business too, and not feel like they're trapped from a financial standpoint. Because if their side business goes good, then they should have the ability to go do that and leave, do what they want. And I think the other piece that I've seen with the family dynamics, with almost all of, well, I would say I'm the oldest of 6 boys, and then I have an older sister. My older sister has had a business for 20 years. I've had my business for almost 20 years now too. And then there's one or two other kids that are pretty entrepreneurial, and then the other half work for those of us that have businesses. And then a couple of my siblings work at my dad's business where I had worked, that was my grandfather's business. And so the other part that you talked about too is not putting that emotional pressure, or not putting any pressure on your kids to say like, oh, if you leave, I'm going to be in trouble. Like, that's not only a functional thing that you want to avoid, because maybe it is true, but on top of it, the functional part of making sure that you're not building a dependency on one single person, it's also that emotional and verbal communication of making sure that you're encouraging your kids and letting them know, hey, you can go do whatever you want, you don't have to stay here. Because nobody in their right mind would go advise another business owner or colleague and say, oh, build your business around a single person. Nobody would tell you to do that. But in the family business dynamic, like you said, I would agree, it happens where you're like, oh, I don't know if I would do if my son left or my daughter left, and because it's like, you assume that you can cross those personal and professional lines, or maybe you don't even think about it.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got to respect the freedom. You've got to encourage the freedom, I believe. And if the kid develops a side business and is getting more and more successful, then he can bring more to the table to your business too. I mean, he knows more about marketing and the different things that can happen, and hopefully that can bring stuff over to your business. So
yeah. Yeah, and you don't. I'm really glad to hear that everything kind of cleared up with you and your family. But I mean, that's not guaranteed if things do go bad. I mean, I know plenty of people that haven't talked to siblings or parents for years, and and that's not good. So going into it with a little bit more wisdom is definitely definitely the right route.
yeah, and it takes you've got to nurture it.
Mm.
You got to proactively develop those. You got to proactively fix it.
Yeah, for sure.
And get out of the situations that are causing the friction.
Right.
So, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, yeah, this has been great, Glenn. Are there any things that, like, on a day-to-day basis you use, or tools or strategies that you use to help you stay focused? I think that being an entrepreneur, it's easy to feel alone or get distracted, or like there's a lot of other things that come at us when we're trying to build the business and be successful. So what's helped you from, with like tools or strategies or mindset things that you've done?
Well, I guess the main thing is having an awesome team. I have a great team, and it's just something that's happened organically. But once somebody comes on and it's a fit and it clicks and all of that stuff, then you got to appreciate it for what it is and how awesome it is, and so the team is awesome. I mean, that's been the best thing for me, and I guess one of the skills that I'm good at and I've become good at is delegating. delegating to the team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very important skill. And I think it changes when you get older. You know, when I hit 40, when I was younger, when I was 20s, 30s, you know, I would have, and if I found ClickFunnels and saw Russell Brunson's presentations and things, I would have been right into it, and I would have been, you know, 12 hours a day doing all this stuff. And my energy is different now in that I am very curious. I always love to learn. I always love to do all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to learn. I want to know what to do, but then I want to delegate.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to have that. You got to know what you're talking about. You got to know what you can do, what can be done, what should be done. You know, you got to look at the metrics. You got to look at all these different things. You got to know all that stuff. But then I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, this thing that we're doing now with this transition to the Facebook process. You know, I don't know if it's right or wrong that I'm not involved with it, but you know, I don't want to get into the Facebook advertising.
Yeah.
I have absolutely zero interest in that. So I just want to hire somebody to do that.
That's good at it. Yep.
I know enough about it to know what I want to accomplish, and you know, thinking about it and strategizing about it and all that stuff. And I know how to communicate what I want, but I don't want to be the person doing it, because to a big extent, I'm the one that slows things down in my business. If I can get myself out of the way, things will get done faster.
Yeah.
And I just need to be the person that is the expert, and I need to focus on the education side of things. And we're doing more videos and stuff right now, and that's really my expertise. So that's where I should focus my effort. And the other stuff I want to delegate, but I want to know what's going on.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. I think you reach a transition point, not only from an age standpoint. I just turned 35. You know, even just from 5 or 6 or 10 years ago, it's a completely different energy level or what you can do and can't do. I used to work way more than I do now. So there's a natural kind of life change that happens, but then also it's like a you know, growth point of your business. If you are doing things right, then you should reach that point where it's just up to you to lay out the strategy and then step back. I think that's, for me, been a challenge in figuring out, you know, how to step back, because I'm a doer and I like jumping in, and I like, you know, like you said, you like learning about how something works, but, you know, then realizing that you can, if you delegate effectively, accomplish a lot more and things go faster. And when I lay the groundwork right in a product or business that I have, then I can step back and I don't need to be involved. And I truly just screw things up when I get involved, like at the levels that I shouldn't be in. Whereas in some new products or ideas or new businesses, that is the time to stay actively involved and figure out the process and map everything out for the team, because that's your role as the founder, as an owner, as like you said, the expert who can really speak with all the years of experience that you have. And that figuring that out is not as simple as I thought it would be. That's for sure. You know, figuring out the transition or figuring out how to do that in the right, you know, in the right cases. But it's definitely what you have to do if you want to keep growing.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I always say, I mean, if you're not growing, you're dying. That's what I tell people about their business. So, you know, somebody else is stealing your customers if you're not getting them. so you always have to keep growing.
Exactly. And I guess if there's one other thing that I've learned, well, I mean, I've learned a lot of things, but one thing that comes to my mind is it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the people that have the lists that are just spamming people and all that stuff, versus the ones that really perform are the ones that develop a trusted relationship and they're careful what they send out to people. Yeah. And they don't send, you know, I know there's a lot of strategies out there of, you know, send every day and, you know, whatever. And I don't send unless, first of all, I only do autoresponders for when people sign up initially. My other emails are, unless they join like a specific course or whatever.
Right.
But my emails to my people are authentic, and they come out when I'm inspired. I don't have a plan, although I probably send out maybe 5 a month or so.
Gotcha.
But it's when I'm inspired to do it.
Hmm.
and I try to do valuable stuff, and I try to develop this relationship with people. And so when I promote something, this is one of the other things that I love about my business is I'll promote stuff and get affiliate commissions on it, and those affiliate commissions are awesome.
Yeah.
I don't do anything for it, no product. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're definitely right. That's definitely something also that I've gone on both sides of it, and I would agree with your approach. Most of the time, like you said, that being authentic, sending something when you're actually inspired, not just creating noise or not just creating yet another autoresponder that may or may not be effective or helpful to people is definitely something to keep in mind. The more intention that we have and the more focus we have on providing value to our audience and our customers and everybody we're working with, the better things go. The more the mass outreach has a place, but you definitely, I feel, get higher results when you have a nice tight knit community or a list of people that are actually engaged. So
Yep.
couldn't agree more. Awesome. Well, I appreciate this, Glenn. This has been really interesting to learn about your journey, and you have shared some really great resources and advice with the audience here. So I appreciate that. What's the best way if you want to work with you or get involved or learn more about what you do? What's the best way to reach you?
Survivalstill.com, survivalstill.com. So still as in like a distiller, a water distiller. Survival Still.
Awesome.
And then, so my email address is just Glenn with 2 N's at survivalstill.com.
Awesome. Well, we will share that in the notes when we send this out to everybody. And thanks so much for being on. And we'll be looking forward to having you back on when you have your new products so you can share more about that. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.